Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond the Box Score, and I am your host Hayat. Today we're breaking down 3 college basketball matchups on February 20th, and this slate is sneaky interesting. We've got St. Louis versus VCU, a game that could turn into a tempo war depending on who dictates pace. We've got Indiana at Purdue, a rivalry spot with history, revenge angles, and a first meeting that still matters. And we've got Bowling Green versus Miami, Ohio, which might not get national headlines but absolutely has situational value written all over it. As always, no guarantees, no promises, just real breakdowns and real analysis based on how these teams actually match up on paper and on the floor. Alright, let's lock in and start connecting the dots. First we have St. Louis versus VCU. Alright, this one right here feels massive strictly from a standings and profile perspective. I'm looking at St. Louis sitting at 24-2 overall, 12-1 in conference, and they just had their win streak snapped with that 81-76 loss to Rhode Island. That 81-76 number jumps out because it tells me they were in a real game late, not blown out, not outclassed, just edged. And when a team is 24-2 and 12-1, and then absorbs a loss like 81-76, my brain immediately goes to response mode. How do elite conference teams answer after the margin for error tightens? On the other side, VCU is 21-6 overall, 12-2 in conference, and they're riding a 10-game win streak after that 89-75 win over George Washington. And 89-75 is not subtle. That's offense operating cleanly. That's separation. What's wild is that earlier in conference play VCU was 2-2. So they were 2-2, and now they're 12-2. That surge tells me something adjusted structurally, whether that's defensive cohesion, tempo control, or shot selection, because you don't just stumble from 2-2 into a 10-game win streak by accident. And then I zoom into the first meeting. St. Louis won that 171-62 at Stuart Siegel Center. That's VCU's building. That's not an easy place to win. And the 71-62 score tells me St. Louis controlled that game defensively. When I dig into the details, VCU went 20 of 24 from the foul line in that matchup. So from a free throw efficiency standpoint, VCU actually performed well. 20 of 24 is strong. But St. Louis held VCU to 12 of 39 from 2-point range. That's the stat that really defines that first meeting. Because if VCU is going 20 of 24 at the foul line and still losing 71-62, it means inside the arc efficiency was suppressed heavily. 12 of 39 from 2 is a major disruption. Now here's where it gets layered. VCU does a lot of damage at the foul line, that's part of their offensive identity. And St. Louis, in A10 play, is third worst in allowing teams to get to the foul line. So there's a tension here. In the first meeting, VCU gets to the line 24 times and converts 20, but they go 12 of 39 from 2 and lose 71-62. Now coming into this game, if St. Louis is still third worst in allowing teams to get to the foul line, that statistically opens the door for VCU's preferred scoring method. But the question becomes, can St. Louis once again compress the 2-point efficiency down into that 12 of 39 type range? I also can't ignore that after losing to St. Louis in the first meeting, VCU then lost at George Mason. So there was a dip right after that head-to-head result. And while they've surged since, we have at least 2 examples of step-up environments not going their way, the 71-62 loss at Stuart Siegel Center and the loss at George Mason right after. This game also carries regular season title implications in the Atlantic 10. St. Louis at 12-1. VCU at 12-2. That's razor-thin separation. If this matchup plays out like the first meeting, where St. Louis dictates interior defense and forces something like 12 of 39 from 2, then the control pattern favors them. If it plays out in a way where VCU's foul line frequency spikes again, 20 of 24 type efficiency, and St. Louis being third worst in allowing teams to get to the foul line becomes amplified, then the math tightens. And then there's that phrase, big number. No spread specified, but just the acknowledgement that this is a big number for a game that could decide the regular season champion. That tells me expectation is tilted towards St. Louis because of 24-2 and 12-1. But when I think through it, I have to reconcile that St. Louis is coming off 81-76, while VCU is coming off 89-75 and on a 10-game win streak after starting conference 2-2. One path I see here statistically is St. Louis leveraging the defensive pressure again, especially inside the arc, forcing something similar to 12 of 39 from 2, and making VCU live at the line. Another path is VCU amplifying that foul line damage, capitalizing on St. Louis being third worst in allowing teams to get there, and turning that into sustained half-court efficiency. Okay, when I zoom out, what defines this matchup statistically is St. Louis at 24-2 and 12-1 coming off 81-76, VCU at 21-6 and 12-2 on a 10-game win streak after 89-75, and the first meeting's blueprint of 71-62 driven by 12 of 39 from 2 despite 20 of 24 at the foul line. Layer on top of that VCU's early 2-2 conference start versus their surge, and St. Louis being third worst in allowing teams to get to the foul line, and that's the tension. That's what stands out most to me when I look strictly at the numbers. Next game we have Indiana at Purdue. Alright, let me think through this one because there's a lot layered into this matchup beyond just surface level rivalry stuff. We already saw these teams play on January 27th, and that game was at Indiana. Purdue was laying 4.5 points in that matchup, so the expectation contextually was that Purdue was viewed as the better team even on the road. Indiana ends up winning that game by 5, and they put up 72 points. That 72 isn't some explosive offensive eruption, but it was enough because Purdue couldn't buy a shot. And when I replay that game in my head, Purdue went down early. They went on multiple droughts. They were playing catch-up most of the game. Every time they'd make a little push, it felt like they just didn't have enough juice to flip control. So even though Indiana scored 72 points, nothing crazy, the bigger story was Purdue's offensive inconsistency that night. Now fast forward, and this one is at Mackey Arena. That location shift matters. Mackey is consistently framed as one of the toughest places to play. And Purdue is coming off what was described as a really tough loss against Michigan. No score given, but the tone matters. Tough loss, went down early again, couldn't keep up. And that's the thread that starts connecting for me statistically and situationally. In some of Purdue's losses this season, when they go down early, it becomes difficult for them to climb back in. That was true on January 27 when Indiana won by 5. That was true against Michigan. Early deficits seem to magnify for this group. But then I zoom out to the KenPom profile because that's where the efficiency picture sharpens. Purdue has the second-ranked offense in adjusted efficiency and the 27th-ranked defense. That's elite offensive structure with a top 30 defensive profile. Indiana, by comparison, ranks 37th offensively and 48th defensively. So analytically, Purdue grades out better on both sides of the ball. 2nd versus 37th on offense, 27th versus 48th on defense. That gap is not minor. That's a full-tier difference on both ends. So if this matchup plays out like the January 27th game, Purdue cold offensively, multiple droughts, down early, then Indiana's ability to simply get to 72 points again could be enough to compress the game. But if the efficiency math reasserts itself, meaning Purdue's second-ranked offense performs like the second-ranked offense and their 27th-ranked defense contains Indiana's 37th-ranked offense, then the structural advantage shows up more clearly. There's also the context of the previous line. Purdue was laying 4.5 points on January 27 and lost by 5. That's a 9.5-point swing relative to the number. Now this one is being framed as a big number. No specific spread listed here, but that phrase matters because it tells me expectation is tilted heavily toward Purdue at home. That expectation isn't random, it's anchored in second-ranked offense, 27th-ranked defense, and Mackey Arena environment. One path I see here statistically is this becoming about pace and shot quality. If Purdue avoids those early droughts that plagued them on January 27 and against Michigan, then their offensive efficiency profile suggests a different outcome trajectory. If Indiana can replicate the rhythm of that first meeting, Purdue down early, Purdue scrambling, Indiana settling into half-court control, then the game tightens. What connects for me is the contrast between what happened on January 27, 72 points from Indiana, Purdue laying 4.5, losing by 5, multiple droughts, and the broader efficiency rankings of 2nd offense and 27th defense for Purdue versus 37th offense and 48th defense for Indiana. That's the statistical tension. On paper, Purdue is better on both sides. In the previous meeting, Indiana controlled flow and Purdue couldn't sustain scoring. Okay, when I zoom out, what defines this matchup statistically is the January 27th result, Indiana by 5 after Purdue laid 4.5. And struggled through multiple droughts while Indiana scored 72, contrasted with Purdue's overall efficiency profile of 2nd-ranked offense and 27th-ranked defense versus Indiana's 37th offense and 48th defense, all now shifting to Mackey Arena after a really tough loss against Michigan. That combination of prior result, efficiency gap, and venue shift is what stands out most to me when I look strictly at the numbers. Last game in this video we have Bowling Green Falcons versus Miami, Ohio RedHawks. Alright, let me just think through this out loud because this one is fascinating strictly from a numbers perspective. You've got Bowling Green sitting at 16-11 overall, 7-7 in conference, and they're coming off that 78-71 loss to Kent State. That snapped their 2-game win streak, and that matters contextually because momentum-wise they were stabilizing a bit before that result. And when I look at 78-71 specifically, that's not a blowout, that's a competitive game where they're right there late. So immediately I'm thinking about game control margins and how Bowling Green tends to operate inside tight windows. Now flip it. Miami, Ohio is 26-0 overall, 26 straight wins, 26-0 under Travis Steele. That's not just good, that's structural dominance. And they're coming off an 86-77 win over UMass, which is interesting because 86-77 tells me pace and offensive efficiency showed up. But even in that game, there were whispers of vulnerability, people circling that spot as a potential first loss situation. Road environment, feisty opponent, and still they close it. That's a trait. But here's where I start digging deeper into Bowling Green. Yes, they lost to Miami, Ohio at home by double digits earlier this season. That's important. That establishes a baseline separation between these teams. They also struggled against Akron in their lone game against the Zips earlier this year and lost. That won. And when you zoom into the road profile, that's where it gets analytically interesting. They lost by 3 to Kent State. Lost by 1 to Toledo. Lost by 3 to Central Michigan. Those are razor-thin margins, 3-1-3. So even though the record says 16-11 and 7-7, the underlying competitiveness away from home in conference play is tighter than people assume. Even that 1-point loss at Toledo, and yes, Toledo may not be the same as last year, but 1 point on the road is still a possession game. So what I'm seeing is a team that doesn't typically get blown out in conference road settings. They hover inside that 1 to 3 point range when they lose. That's a theme. Now back to Miami, Ohio because the dominance side of this is loud, 26 straight wins. And if I isolate the last 5 wins, 4 of those last 5 have been by 9 or more points. So while Bowling Green's road losses are tight, 3-1-3. Miami's recent victories are clearing separation thresholds. And the home margins. Beat Ohio by 16. Beat Northern Illinois by 24. Throttled Central Michigan by 39. Beat Western Michigan by 11. That 39 against Central Michigan jumps off the page. That's not variance, that's structural mismatch. They've also had close calls against Buffalo and UMass at home, margins not specified, but that at least introduces volatility into the data set. It's not every single night dominance. There have been moments of play with fire scenarios. But they still win. That's the key layer, they haven't floundered. They haven't flustered. They haven't fallen apart. And when I hear projected score ranges like 75-63 or 81-69, that's basically pointing toward a 12-point outcome. Miami, Ohio by 12 points. That aligns with the recent pattern of 9+ margins in 4 of the last 5 wins. It also sits above those 3-1-3 Bowling Green road loss margins. So analytically, there's tension between Miami's recent separation trend and Bowling Green's ability to hang inside small road defeat windows. If this matchup plays out like the earlier meeting where Bowling Green lost by double digits at home, then the 12-point type projection, 75-63 or 81-69, fits the statistical story of Miami's consistency. But if it plays out like Bowling Green's road conference losses, 3-1-3, then the game compresses into possession basketball late. What connects for me statistically is this contrast. Bowling Green's conference road losses are all within 3 points, but Miami, Ohio's last 4 of 5 wins are by 9 or more, including 16, 24, 39, and 11 at home against comparable league teams. And layered on top of that is 26-0 overall and 26 straight wins under Travis Steele. That's not random. Okay, when I zoom out, what defines this matchup statistically is Bowling Green's pattern of narrow road conference defeats, 3-1-3, versus Miami, Ohio's sustained margin creation, 9+ in 4 of the last 5, highlighted by 39, 24, 16, and 11 at home. All within the context of 26-0 in a recent 86-77 performance against UMass. That tension between competitive road margins and dominant home separation is what stands out most to me when I look strictly at the numbers. Alright, that wraps up all 3 college basketball matchups for February 20th. As always, this was analysis and opinion only, nothing guaranteed, just me walking through how these games could realistically play out if the numbers, tempo, and situational spots unfold the way they're trending. Now I want to hear from you. Drop AZ in the comments and tell me which of these 3 games stood out the most. Was it the revenge angle? The efficiency mismatch? The pace spot? Or are you seeing something completely different? More breakdowns coming soon, same raw format, same deep dives, no fluff, just us connecting the dots. I'll see you in the next one.